Why is this here? There's like 10 YouTube videos about why Melbourne doesn't already have a train to the airport. There's really no point in me adding to that list. Everyone's always making so much fun of Melbourne. Oh, you guys don't have a train to the airport. Oh, boo-hoo. But let's cool it for a second, guys. It's not exactly like Sydney's airport line is sensational. In fact, honestly, Sydney's airport line kinda sucks. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you probably wouldn't have clicked the video if I hadn't titled it that. Look, the Sydney Airport Link gets the job done. It gets you straight from the airport to the city in 10 to 15 minutes, and it's pretty frequent. That's a lot better than many other cities, including a certain one that shall remain nameless. In terms of positives though, that's kind of it.
Tight curves, no space for luggage, overcrowded trains, but worst of all, the bane of every Sydney sider's existence. Extremely, ridiculously expensive ticket prices that you can only afford if you sell your house, which you also can't afford because you live in Sydney.
All right, what's the budget of this video gonna be? I gotta visit each station. Holy shit. You know what? Get on with the sponsorships, okay? We're really gonna need the money for this video.
Bro, we don't have a sponsor.
Oh, fuck. All right, I guess we're ticket evading today. Oh, okay, we're in. Before we begin to understand why the airport link sucks, we need to rewind a bit.
Sydney Airport opened way back in 1920, making it one of the world's oldest continuously operating airports. However, the only way to get to our airport for decades was by car. That wasn't too big a deal back in the 90s when Sydney only had 3.6 million residents and Bearwood was considered Western Sydney, but it was about to become a problem.
The winner is Sydney, Australia.
Sydney won its bid for the Olympics in 1993. A lot of people were about to descend on Sydney, and contrary to what tourists probably thought, they sure wouldn't be able to ride a kangaroo from the airport to the Olympic Park. Back in 1990, 82% of commuters took some form of private vehicle, private car or taxi, to the airport. Only 16% took the bus, of which there were only two routes, one from Circular Quay and one from King's Cross. Some form of mass transit was desperately needed.
And most importantly, we needed to build it as cheap and as poorly as possible. Wait, that can't be right.
A passenger rail link to Mascot would solve a great many problems. It would mean far fewer commuter cars. Why risk delays and pay for expensive parking if a train takes you straight to the terminal?
Yeah, that point is kind of moot if you make the train super expensive too. Now, apparently no one warned the government that they'd have to spend money on the Olympics. To save on costs, they engaged in a public-private partnership with Transfield Services and guess, you know, I'm not even gonna pretend I said that right.
Bouygues.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. Transfield Services and Bouygues together formed the Airport Link Company, and they gained the responsibility for building the Airport Link and then operating its stations for 30 years. The Airport Link started construction in 1995 and opened in 2000. 5 years of construction is on the lower end of what you'd expect. Needless to say, they were in a bit of a rush. The line opened in May 2000, only 4 months before the Olympics.
In a city where everything opens 10 years late, you can bet planners wanted to make this line as quick and easy to build as possible, which is why the airport link is kind of badly built.
But before we get to that, real quick shout out to my Ko-fi supporters. The channel really wouldn't be possible without their financial support. But I've actually decided to start a Patreon for a few reasons. Patreon is much more well known and it has an app which makes it easier to use. My Patreon will feature the exact same stuff as my Ko-fi, such as early access to new videos, special access to Discord channels, merch discounts, and more. If you sign up before the 15th of March with the discount code Remove the Surcharge, you'll get 50% off the first month. Anyway, back to the video. The line has some of the narrowest underground platforms in Sydney, paling in comparison to the huge platforms on the new Sydney Metro. This is honestly a bit dangerous, especially in times where the station becomes crowded.
The airport link also has curved platforms, something that beggars belief for a railway not built in the 1800s. Curved platforms reduce the speed at which trains can enter a platform and create hazardous gaps for commuters. among other issues. They managed to avoid curved platforms on the Epping to Chatswood rail link, which opened only 9 years later, but it was probably cheaper to just plonk the platforms wherever on the line. Additionally, Mascot Station was only built with one rather small station entrance, which didn't prove to be sufficient for Mascot's many new apartments. So the government spent $40 million building a new entrance, which they probably could have saved by just building a second entrance the first time.
The problems get worse though. The best airport rail links serve only one purpose, to get travellers to and from the airport. I was in Toronto late last year, and we took the Union Pearson Express to get from the airport to Toronto's downtown. It only took us 25 minutes. There was dedicated rolling stock with dedicated space for our luggage, which you can bet we used. The seats were comfy, with tables and PowerPoints for charging. There were even screens that told us flight information. Incredible!
The problem is, unlike the Toronto UP Express, Sydney's— what? Shut up! Why did you always talk? I know it's going to Revesby. That's why I got on the train. The problem is, unlike the Toronto UP Express, Sydney's airport link isn't a dedicated airport train line. It's a suburban line doubling as an airport line.
The T8 line starts at Macarthur before running through the airport link to Central. Before the airport link opened, all services went via Sydenham. Diverting most East Hills line services into the airport link was partly done to free up capacity on the Illawarra line between Central and Walleye Creek Junction. Segregation makes the T8 less susceptible to delays on other lines and theoretically allows the T8 to run more frequently. The T8 is effectively 3 different train lines. The Express and the Local both run through the airport link. There's also the Sydenham Express, a peak-only service that runs on the old alignment. Oh, on that note, Walleye Creek was added late in planning at the junction of the T4 and T8, and doesn't have platforms on the East Hills line, meaning Sydenham Express trains can't actually stop there, which is a shame for such a busy station. Anyways, the Express and Local both run every 15 minutes off peak, and since they stop at every station from Walleye Creek to Central, that gives the airport link stations a train every 7 or so minutes almost all day. I'll admit, that's pretty good. Brisbane's airport link runs only every half an hour for substantial parts of the day, so we're doing better than them. Their airport link somehow sucks even harder than ours. Great video on that in the top right if you want to find out more.
The thing is, in peak hour, the T8 spends between 20 minutes to an hour collecting passengers headed to the city, slowly becoming more and more packed. Once they finally make it to the airport, there's barely enough space for travellers with big suitcases to actually fit on the train. If there aren't enough seats, good luck finding for room in the vestibule. Even when it's not peak hour and there are enough seats, like right now, travellers still have to lug their suitcases up or down the stairs if there isn't room in the vestibule, because the airport line, being a suburban line, just uses Sydney's standard double-decker trains. No luggage racks, no flight information, nothing that the UP Express offers.
Honestly, if they ran a competition for worst type of train to run to an airport, I think double-decker trains would come second after Skybus. When they were first planning the airport link, they fully planned to have dedicated rolling stock.
The train is unique, specially designed single-deck luxury. The ticket price is higher than normal, but so is the standard. We don't pretend it will be exactly like this.
Yeah, no shit.
After the airport, the next 2 stations are Mascot and Green Square, 2 very dense suburbs. Perhaps unsurprisingly, they're also the 2 busiest stations on the T8. So you're basically forcing travellers with huge suitcases to compete with people from the suburbs and people from the densest suburbs in Australia. Brilliant. Oh, also, the T8 ends up back in the city circle at Central. Operationally, the T8 and T2 are actually the same train line, so delays to other lines, particularly the T2, end up affecting the T8 anyway. Admittedly, if you live in Sydney's southwest, the T8 is really useful for getting to the airport, but overall, having a suburban line with double-decker trains acting as an airport line isn't exactly ideal. But we still haven't even gotten to the worst part. The dreaded airport surcharge. It costs an extraordinary $17.34 to use either the domestic or international airport stations, and $15.50 for children, students and pensioners. And that's on top of actually getting to the airport. So if you're coming from, say, Central, it'll cost you $20.28 to get to the airport. Outrageous.
To compare, the journey from Central to Mascot, about the same distance, only costs $2.94. The Airport Link Company contributed about $200 million to the project, with the government paying $700 million. In return, the Airport Link Company got to charge people whatever amount of money they wanted to use each station. Which is weird because they didn't even contribute that much money. The taxpayer got screwed over. But what else is new? If you're on your own, taking the Airport Link may be justifiable because it's cheaper than an Uber. But once you add more people to that journey, it becomes much less worth it. From Cherrybrook Metro Station, it costs $22.96 to get to the airport off-peak, and $18.30 if you're concession. My family has 2 adults and 4 uni students. Yes, I have 3 siblings. Meaning it would cost us all $119 to get to the airport by train. An Uber for 6 people would cost around $129, and $141 if we needed extra space for luggage. That's an easy choice. It's just not that much more expensive to catch an Uber. And hey, you could even just park your car at Blue Emu for 5 days for just $132. Because of this ridiculous surcharge, the airport stations are somewhat underused. Back in 2014, the mode share of the airport line was only 15%, which is an embarrassing fall on the 1990 mode share. The airport stations aren't ghost towns by any means. The domestic airport is Sydney's 35th busiest station and international airport our 53rd, but there's definitely underutilization. Green Square and Mascot used to have their own surcharges, albeit a much cheaper $2.60. Okay, real talk, do these escalators at Green Square literally ever work? Maybe the surcharge is only there to just pay people to keep fixing them. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, that's right. The New South Wales government decided to remove the surcharges for Green Square and Mascot in 2011, and by early 2012, Mascot's patronage had gone up by 39%, and Green Square's by an insane 114%. The surcharge is clearly a limiting factor. The even more annoying thing is that the airport still only has 2 bus routes to it. The 350 from Bondi Junction and the 420 from Burwood. There should be a lot more buses than that, seriously. Fortunately, they run every 10 and 15 minutes respectively, and many people use them to get from the airport to Mascot and then get the train from there, hence bypassing the surcharge and saving a lot of money. The sneaky back door, as my friend calls it. It's quite tiring though, especially after a long flight. You shouldn't have to perform public transport acrobatics just to save money.
Do you want a plot twist? Come closer, I'll tell you something crazy.
I actually like season 8 of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Is that so crazy? It wasn't that bad. Oh, right, the Airport Link. Yeah, most of the surcharge revenue doesn't even go to the Airport Link Company. 85% of it goes to the New South Wales government. What?
Surely then, since the government is the one getting most of the money due to a revenue sharing agreement, they could compensate the Airport Link Company for their small share and then just scrap the surcharge.
So why don't they do that? That would make it substantially more attractive to travel to the airport by train. Well, the government made $100 million last year from the surcharge alone, money that they definitely don't want to lose. The surcharge actually expires in May 2030, which is good, but also sadly just close enough that we're very unlikely to see the government remove the surcharge any earlier. Why would they? It's just 5 more years. 5 more long, painful years. As for why they didn't remove it sooner, well, money. But also remember, the airport line gets overcrowded now, when the airport stations aren't getting used to their maximum capacity. Imagine when the airport stations are getting heavily used. It's gonna be chaos.
A final unsubstantiated theory of mine is that it's actually in Sydney Airport's best interests to keep the surcharge. Remember, it's often cheaper to drive and park at the airport, and that includes just getting someone to come pick you up and park only for a bit. But that's only because taking the train is so expensive. As soon as they remove the surcharge, the airport's probably going to lose a lot of parking revenue. So I can't imagine Sydney Airport wants that to happen any sooner than 2030. I want to be clear though, this is purely speculation with no actual proof. So, put me in charge for a day, what would I do? Step 1. Remove the airport surcharge. That's a no-brainer, nothing else to say. Step 2. Run more services through the airport link to help with increased patronage. Honestly, I'd just get rid of the Sydenham Express and run them through the airport link instead, because it only saves about 5 minutes. That amounts to an additional 13 trains in the morning peak and 8 in the evening. If it's possible, upping the less frequent T8 local from 4 to 6 trains an hour would also go a long way. Step 3. Relink the T2 with the T3 such that they are operationally the same, allowing the T8 to be operationally segregated. This allows for Step 4. The government should acquire single-decker trains with luggage racks for the airport line. This could possibly run purely on the T8 local, which I suspect is a quieter line since it runs less trains. It would, however, mean that less than half the trains that stop at the airport will have dedicated airport trains, and replacing the entire T8 with dedicated airport trains seems a bit unnecessary. Truthfully, there's no easy solution to the lack of dedicated rolling stock, and I don't think this will ever be resolved.
Look, at the end of the day, Sydney's airport line gets the job done, and I do think that once the surcharge goes, that will probably remove about 80% of why we all hate the line. And hey, whenever you're unhappy about having to pay the surcharge, just remember that Melbourne Skybus somehow costs more than the airport link. Poor Melbourne.
Oi, it's that annoying fan-eating YouTuber. Let's get it!
Oh crap! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time, or whatever, I don't know. Wait, Greensborough's a Taco Bell? Okay, you know what? I don't want to live here anymore.